Hello everyone, welcome to the online classes for class 8. I hope you all are keeping fine and keeping safe at your homes. This is the second video with regards to the second chapter of Civics, that is the Union Executive. In the last video we studied about the powers and the functions and about the election of the president. In this chapter we study about the vice president, the prime minister and the council of ministers, the functions of the prime minister, the position of the prime minister and civil servants. Coming on to the vice president, he is elected by members of both the houses of the parliament for a period of 5 years. A person to become a vice president needs to be an Indian citizen above the age of 35 years. After being elected as the vice president, he also discharges his duty as the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha. He presides over the meetings and also regulates debates and proceedings of the House. He may resign before the end of his term, that is 5 years, or he can be removed from office by a resolution passed by an absolute majority of both the houses of the parliament. He also carries out function in the absence of the president, which means if the president dies or if the president resigns or if the president is removed from his office, then it is the vice president who carries out the function in the absence of the president. Coming on to the prime minister and the council of ministers. The leader of the majority party or parties who has got absolute majority in the Lok Sabha is appointed by the president as the prime minister of the country. After being elected as the prime minister selects his own council of ministers, which are divided into 3 categories. These categories being the cabinet ministers, the ministers of states and the deputy ministers. The cabinet ministers, they are the most important ministers who hold important portfolios such as the home, the finance and the defense. The prime minister is the most important person in the country. He is not only the leader of the Lok Sabha, but also the leader of the majority party represented in the Lok Sabha. He has a big responsibility of managing the affairs in the country, both internal as well as external, together with the Council of Ministers. The Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, they are the most powerful institution in the Indian body politic. That means that they are the ones who are the real executive of the country. All the decisions regarding the national interest of the country is taken up by the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. Now coming on to the functions of Prime Minister. Before going to the functions of the Prime Minister, I would like to say that the person, in order to become a minister in the Lok Sabha or in the Rajya Sabha, has to be a member of any of the house. An outsider can also be appointed as a minister only on the condition that within the 6 months given to him or her, the person should be elected or nominated in either of the house. In case of failing to do so, the minister gives up his or her portfolios after the end of the 6 months from the date of his appointment. Now coming on to the functions of the Prime Minister. With the appointment of the ministers, the Council of Ministers is formed. The Prime Minister allots one or more department to each ministers. This particular department, the allotment of the department is called as the portfolios. The ministers are known by their portfolios. For example, like Minister of Defense, or Minister of Finance, Minister of Health, etc. The second function being collective responsibility to the Lok Sabha. That means that the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, they are directly responsible to the Lok Sabha, and they can only remain in the office as long as they enjoy the support or the majority in the Lok Sabha. If the ruling party loses the majority in the Lok Sabha, the government steps down. This particular thing is called as the no confidence motion, which we had studied in lesson 1. The third one, that the Prime Minister takes important decisions together with the cabinet. The cabinet is headed by the Prime Minister, and all the important decisions are taken by the cabinet, and the rest of the ministers, they are bound to obey the decision of the cabinet. The decisions of the cabinet, they are binding upon all the other ministers. Cabinet being the most important part of the Council of Ministers. This is the reason why whatever decisions are taken by the cabinet under the leadership of the Prime Minister, the other ministers, they have to abide with that decisions taken by the cabinet. So Prime Minister together with the cabinet, they take the important decisions in the interest of the country. For example, the decision for the surgical strike or bringing back Major Abhinandan from Pakistan, the meeting was held by the cabinet under the leadership of the Prime Minister. It was the Prime Minister and the cabinet ministers who decided how the surgical strike had to take place and how or what will be the procedure for bringing back Abhinandan to India. So all the important decisions, major decisions in the interest of the country is taken up by the Prime Minister in accordance with the cabinet ministers. This is the reason why cabinet ministers are the most important council of ministers. Now coming on to the position of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister selects the other ministers and also distribute the portfolios among them. He is the one who decides as to who will be appointed as the ministers in his Council of Ministers. He is the one who decides which portfolio should be given to which particular minister. Secondly, he presides over the cabinet meetings and decides the business to be transacted at such meetings. The cabinet meetings, they are presided by the Prime Minister, and he is the one who decides as to which particular matter has to be discussed in the cabinet meetings. The third being, the Prime Minister, he can also demand resignation of any minister. This means that if the Prime Minister is not satisfied with the working of any of his minister, he has the full freedom to ask or demand resignation from that particular minister. And the minister has to resign it once the Prime Minister asks him or her to resign. The fourth being, the Prime Minister is the link between the President and the Council of Ministers. This means that the Prime Minister reports the President about the decision of the Cabinet, and it also advises the President whether to dissolve the Lok Sabha or to discontinue the session of the Lok Sabha. The Prime Minister can also expand his cabinet. That means that he can put some extra ministers in his cabinet. It is he who decides how many ministers are there to be in his cabinet. Whatever decisions are taken in the cabinet meetings, it is the Prime Minister who delivers those particular decisions to President. He is gives an information to the President about the meetings which have been taken place between the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. He also advises the President on various appointments to important posts such as the judges to the Supreme Court, the governors and the ambassadors to the various foreign countries. So these are the important functions of the Prime Minister together with the position of the Prime Minister. So looking at the functions and the position of the Prime Minister, it is very clear that it is the Prime Minister who is the real head of the country. He is the one who, together with his Council of Ministers, they are the real executives. The President only exercises his powers on the advice of the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. This is the reason why Prime Minister plays a very important role in the Indian Union Executive. Now coming on to the last topic, that is the civil servants. Now civil servants are the people who are not members of any political party. The President, the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, they form the political executive, whereas the civil servants who are not members of any political party, they form the administrative or the permanent executives. The cabinet ministers, they only formulate the policies, while the implementation or the real execution of the law is done by the civil servants. And as they do not belong to any political party, so they are expected to be impartial in the implementation of a particular law. As they implement the laws in the country which have been formulated by the cabinet ministers, this is the reason why they are also called as the administrative and permanent executives. Now, how are they selected? They are selected by the Union Public Service Commission. Most of the civil servants at the states, they are selected by the Union Public Service Commission, and they are responsible for public interest in maintaining the law and ensuring that proper procedures are followed. So altogether, the civil servants are also a part of the executive in the way that they are the ones who implement the laws which have been formulated by the cabinet ministers. As they do not belong to any political party, so they are expected to be impartial in the implementation of a law. And this is the reason why they are called as the administrative or permanent executive, because they are the ones who are responsible for the implementation of a law. They are the ones who are responsible for public interest in maintaining the law and ensuring that proper procedures are followed. Now, just a quick recap of whatever we have studied today. The Vice President is elected by the members of both houses of the Parliament for a period of 5 years. In order to become the Vice President, the person should be an Indian citizen above the age of 35 years. After being elected as the Vice President, he acts as an ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha. The Vice President is also allowed to carry out functions in the absence of the President. If the President dies or resigns or is removed from his office, then the Vice President carries out the function in the absence of the President. He may resign or he can be removed by the Parliament through a 2/3 majority in both the houses of the Parliament. This is called as a process of impeachment. Coming on to the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, the leader of the majority party in the Lok Sabha is appointed as the Prime Minister of the country by the President of India. After being appointed as the Prime Minister, he selects his own Council of Ministers, which are divided into 3 categories. The first being the Cabinet Ministers, the second being the Ministers of State, and the third being the Deputy Ministers. The Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, they are the most powerful institution in the Indian body politic. That means that the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, they are the real executive. They are the ones who are running the country. Coming on to the functions of the Prime Minister, after selecting his Council of Ministers, the Prime Minister divides different departments to the ministers, which is known as the portfolios. Each and every minister is allotted a particular department called as the portfolios. For example, Minister of Health, Minister of Finance, Minister of Defense, etc. Secondly, they are collective responsibility to the Lok Sabha, which means the Prime Minister together with the Council of Ministers, they are collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. They remain in the Lok Sabha till the time they enjoy the majority or support of the Lok Sabha. Once the support is taken off, the ruling government steps down. This is called as the no confidence motion. The third being all the important decisions are taken by the cabinet under the guidance of Prime Minister, and the decisions taken by the cabinet, they are binding upon all ministers, which means that each and every minister, they have to abide by the decisions taken up by the cabinet ministers under the leadership of the Prime Minister. The cabinet ministers cannot take the decisions on their own. They are headed by the Prime Minister, who is the real executive of the country. So, in a joint meeting between the cabinet ministers under the leadership of the Prime Minister, important decisions are taken in the interest of the country. Like example I gave you about the surgical strike, and also the return of Abhinandan. Coming on to the position of the Prime Minister, he selects the ministers and also distributes portfolios between them. He is the one who decides which particular ministers should be a part of his Council of Ministers and which particular department has to be given to a particular minister. So the decision of the selection of ministers and the distribution of the portfolios among the ministers is done by the Prime Minister. Being the leader of his party, he presides over the cabinet meetings. He can also demand resignation of any minister if he is not satisfied with the working of that particular minister. He is a link between the President and Council of Ministers in a way that whatever decisions are taken by the Council of Ministers, it is the President is informed by the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister, he is a link between the President and the Council of Ministers. The Council of Ministers, they do not have any role to play with the President. It is the Prime Minister who is a mediator between the President and the Council of Ministers. He is the one responsible for giving information about all the meetings or all the discussions being taken in the cabinet meetings. Lastly, he also advises the President on the appointment of various important posts like the judges of the Supreme Court, the High Court, the ambassadors to the foreign countries or the diplomats to the foreign countries. He also advises the President whether the Lok Sabha should be dissolved or whether the Lok Sabha should be prorogued. Coming on to the last topic, that is the civil servants. Civil servants are not members of any political party. This is the reason why they are called as the administrative and permanent executives. They are the ones who are responsible for the implementation of a law which have been formulated by the cabinet. So as they are not members of any political party, so they are expected to be impartial in the enforcing or implementation of a law. All the civil servants at the union or the center level, they are selected by the Union Public Service Commission. You have the civil services exams every year. People, they sit in these exams, and the ones who are the toppers, they are selected as the civil servants. These civil servants, they are responsible for public interest in maintaining the law and ensuring that proper procedures are followed. So the real work of the implementation of a law is done by the civil servants. This is the reason why they are called as the permanent executives, as they are not part of any political party. This ends the second chapter of the Union Executive. The assignment and the notes would be uploaded through the PDF, which the students can look into it in the YouTube channel. I hope you must have understood the second lesson very carefully. Kindly do the assignments in a separate notebook, which have to be submitted once the school reopens. Make sure that you write the answers to the point, and also explanation should be done. I hope to get all the notebooks on time, as it would be easy for you and for me to complete the syllabus on time. So thank you for watching this video. Stay safe.